Well, the sudden move by the government to sack the DRDO chief last night has created major controversy. The defence minister today said it was done to bring in a younger face. But that doesn't explain why the government actually extended Dr. Avinash Chandar's term only 2 months ago, putting him on contract till 2016. To add to the confusion, Dr. Chandar was informed of his sacking through the media.
A day after news broke that he'd been sacked, nothing much changed for this man, Dr. Avinash Chandar, the veteran missile scientist who's also the Defence Minister's scientific advisor.
A day after a government website indicated that he'd been sacked, Dr. Avinash Chandar was back at work as usual in the building behind me, the DRDO Bhavan. By late in the afternoon, the Minister Manohar Parrikar made it clear he needed the services of someone considerably younger.
I have recommended that I do not want this position to be held by a person on a contract. We will find out someone good from DRDO who has a urge for development.
Ironically, it was this government that had extended the 64-year-old Chandar's contract just 2 months back, a decision that evidently didn't sit well with the new Defence Minister Manohar Parrikar. According to sources, the government feels a new DRDO innovation, a battery-controlled silver chariot built with costly material for a temple, was an utter waste. There's a laid-back attitude at the DRDO when Make in India is the government's mantra for the defence sector. NDTV has also learned that the Prime Minister's office was in receipt of a complaint against Chandar, though the nature of these complaints remain unclear. Chandar first heard of the government's decision to sack him from reporters last night.
No comments. Sir, आखिर क्यों ऐसा हुआ सर? No comments.
Dr. Chandar, called India's missile man, has personally been responsible for the development of indigenous navigation systems on board India's most advanced ballistic missiles, the Agni 4 and the Agni 5. The decision to not renew his contract comes months after the Prime Minister had told DRDO employees that a chalta hai attitude was just not good enough. With Sudhir Ranjan Sen and Sunil Prabhu, Vishnu Shom for NDTV.
Well, the question really is whether the sacking of Dr. Chandar was then justified, and is it the shake-up that the DRDO needs? Could it have been handled differently? Could it have been handled better? Many questions that are being asked of the government tonight, not a lot of answers that are forthcoming. Ajay Shukla, defence analyst and strategic affairs writer, joins us here in the studio. We're also joined this evening by our science editor Pallav Bagla and Randeep Singh Surjewala and Sambit Patra. Stay with us this evening. Ajay, to you first. What do you make of this entire episode since last night?
Well, I've spoken to a lot of scientists today, both DRDO and from the Department of Atomic Energy and so on. They say it's a slap on the face of the scientific community. There is deep resentment, not just about the sacking of Avinash Chandar, but more about the way that it was done. Everybody believes that a man who has devoted 42 years of his life to this organization, who has been associated with every successful rocketry program starting from the Prithvi missile to the Agni 5, everybody whose own personal programs have been associated with on time, on cost delivery, to have been treated in this manner at the fag end of his career, where he is called up by journalists and said, "Have you heard that you've been sacked?" And he has to say, "No, I haven't heard about it yet." It's just an insult to beat all insults. If this is the way scientists believe that they are going to be treated, all I can say is you're not going to get very good results from the DRDO.
So you're saying deep resentment within the scientific community.
There is a lot of ill feeling today. There's a lot of ill will.
Pallav Bagla, I'll take that to you. Pallav, is that the sense that you're getting as well, what Ajay is hearing? You know, one part of the story, of course, is about the DRDO and the way it's functioned, and that's one part of the story. But the other is how this happened and how this has played out over the last 24 hours. Because there was on the website, the letter that terminated his services, that was put up, that was then mysteriously taken off half an hour later. And the fact is, he did hear about it through the press. Should it have been done this way, Pallav?
Well, certainly there could have been a better way of handling this, and that is what I have heard from deep within the Defence Research and Development Organization. But to say that the government was not within its rights to do it, the government was well within its rights to do what it did. And let me make it clear, it is only his contract which has been terminated. His services were not terminated, and the government made it clear that there was no controversy and that there was no corruption involved in this, and that he has delivered on several projects. But can the DRDO deliver better on more projects? Certainly it can deliver. The Prime Minister himself on August 28, 2014 said very clearly that the DRDO needs to set up 5 laboratories where even the heads of agencies of the labs should be under 35 years of age. When the Prime Minister himself wants a younger organization, to have a chief of DRDO who has crossed 64 was certainly not an issue which was tenable with the government, and they found an honorable exit, in my opinion, to the DRDO chief by giving him a tenure till the end of the month. If there was a disciplinary action that was to be taken against the DRDO chief, then he would have been removed with immediate effect.
But Pallav,
so in a way, could it have been handled better? Certainly it should have been handled better.
My question though is, the Prime Minister and Avinash Chandra are the same age. I mean, the Prime Minister is running the country. He's the leader of the entire country at about 64 or years of age. So why is then Dr. Avinash Chandra suddenly out of the blue seen as too old for the job? I mean, his contract was just extended only 2 months ago. Then it shouldn't have happened.
In most cases, the tenure of the chief of DRDO has been till the age of 64. So there is a certain convention that at the age of 64, the chief of DRDO is retiring or superannuates. Now, there was a certain vacuum in the government. I wouldn't say a vacuum, but a transition happening in November, October, when the defense ministers were changing, and they probably couldn't take a call on what needs to be done. And more importantly, just a day earlier, the ISRO chief, his contract was extended, and his tenure was, new ISRO chief was appointed with a contract of 3 years. So maybe at that point, the government suddenly realized that they have a person whose age was beyond 64, and they needed a young
Ajay
person.
has a quick point to make.
And having a young person as the helm of DRDO is certainly very good.
Okay, well, maybe they should have thought of it earlier.
First of all, his date of birth has not changed that I know of between November and today. November, had they turned around the government and said, we have decided not to place you on contract, you've reached the age of superannuation, we suggest you leave by the end of this month, that would have been perfectly honorable. It would have been fine with Avinash Chandra, but to do it in the manner that it was done is completely, it's an insult to the man. But more importantly, you go and look at scientific establishments anywhere in the world. 64 is not the age at which a scientist reaches the end of his useful working life. In Russian establishments, in American establishments, it is routine to find scientists, the top level managers, being 70, 75 years old. Avinash Chandra's brain has not stopped working or slowed down when he reached 64 years of age. So I think that, rather than choosing between younger and older, if they discriminated between competent and incompetent, it would be more useful to the DRDO.
And yet, Commodore Uday Bhaskar joins us as well. Sir, you've heard both sides of the debate here. Ajay Shukla has a point of view, Pallav Bagla has another. But there's also been a lot of criticism of the DRDO itself as an organization over the years. There was a parliamentary standing committee on defense for 2014 and 15, which had raised a lot of red flags about how the budget was going up, that the DRDO needed to think out of the box, that it wasn't really fulfilling its role, and how the scientists were actually among the best paid in India and basically needed to deliver and do much, much more. Now, do you believe in a sense that the government has also sent out a message that you have to pull up your socks and, that there's an urgent need to change, that it's maybe a shake-up that was required?
Well, Nidhi, there are two issues here. One is about the institutional review of the DRDO. And this is something that has been engaging the government for the last 10 years that I can recall. When Dr. Manmohan Singh was Prime Minister in UPA, he had set up a committee called the Palle Ramarao Committee, which had done a review of the DRDO and had made certain recommendations. But unfortunately, that report has not been made available in the public domain. As far as Prime Minister Modi is concerned, soon after taking over, he had visited the DRDO, and at that time, I think he had made it very clear that the institution needs to deliver more and one phrase associated with Prime Minister Modi is, the chalta hai attitude will not do. Meaning that at the highest levels of government, there was a sense that the institution needed a certain degree of review, audit, and that it needed to do better. I don't think there is any, shall we say, particular argument or two views about that DRDO needs this kind of an institutional review. But, and this is a big but, the manner in which Dr. Avinash Chandar has been unceremoniously removed from his office is graceless, it is shabby, and I'm afraid it doesn't reflect very well as far as the government of the day is concerned in terms of institution building. It is true, Mr. Parrikar has just taken over as Defence Minister. The chief of the DRDO is also the scientific advisor to the minister. So he is free to choose his team. But this could have been done in a better way. And as Ajay pointed out, the same government gave him an extension in November. So I think the way in which it has been done does not contribute to any kind of institution building.
Okay,
or the
I'll take that to Sambit Patra.
That DRDO needs.
Sambit Patra, you've heard the criticism at least of the way this was handled. That's part one. Would you concede that this wasn't exactly the best way to have handled the situation?
Nidhi, there are two parts to this whole debate. I mean, the one part is whether the DRDO chief, Mr. Chandar, should have been allowed to, should have left the institution at this age, or should he have allowed to continue with his contractual job? The second part of the debate is, was the way in which he was made to leave the institution was ceremonious or unceremonious? I believe to the first part I have a different take, and to the second part I would say I was not privy to the way he was asked to leave. And well, yes, if that was not ceremonious, it would have been good if it would have been ceremonious enough. I agree to that, because most of the people on my channel are seniors, they are scientists, or they know the scientific faculty well. So I would not supersede them or outshout them in the debate. But as far as the first part of the debate is concerned, an overhauling of the DRDO is a matter of utmost essence, and there is no dispute to the fact that DRDO should have changed, which the UPA dispensation absolutely did not work about. And my previous speaker was talking about the Ramarao committee. The Ramarao committee had also identified that young people had to be brought in. And over here I have a piece of extract of Mr. Chandar's speech. I can just read out few sentences of the speech. The impact of extensions policy on DRDO's talent pool is immense. An internal survey found that most of its entry-level scientists are unhappy about their career prospects, and some 57% of the scientists leave the organizations prematurely. To which Mr. Chandar says that DRDO's annual intake of young scientists has dipped to 70 per year. Just imagine, this is what has happened to the young scientists. But then why did the government
give him an extension in November when he was up for retirement? Why did the NDA government put him on contract, Sambit? Why not then just let him go? I mean, what changed in 2 months? His age didn't. He was still, whatever, 60 plus.
No, definitely. As per the rules of you are right to ask that what changed in few months. Definitely paradigm shifts do occur. And the government, in fact, has categorically mentioned that it wants a change. None other than the Prime Minister wanted that there should be young blood.
But the Prime Minister wanted that change before he retired in November. So therefore, when he retired, he could have been allowed to retire and you could have had a different DRDO chief. Why put him on contract then? The Prime Minister's statement was much earlier.
No, that in November he was put into contract, but definitely, as my previous speaker also said, that a paradigm shift had to occur, and the rules mandate that the DRDO scientist had to retire by the age of 60. And under extraordinary circumstances, a 2-year extension can be allowed. He was already at 64. So what did you want?
But what changed in 2 months? The point is, okay, look, Randeep Surjewala, I don't know if Sambit has all the answers to this question. Certainly, this is something Manohar Parrikar needs to answer more than Sambit does. But, Randeep Surjewala, at the end of the day, you can't deny that the DRDO also needed a shake-up of some sort. And, a lot of people are looking at this today and saying that's what the Prime Minister wanted.
Nidhi, the simple question that we all need to understand and answer for ourselves is this. Here is a gentleman who has given 42 years of his life to DRDO in an exceptional manner. Here is a gentleman who is responsible for development of Agni 1, 2, 3, and he was following admittedly publicly stated 2 goals. 1, to give by September 2015 this year a 6,000 kilometer range Agni missile, as also to ensure that India reacts to a nuclear attack within minutes. Do you sack such an important head of scientific community in such a disgraceful fashion, deride him, humiliate him, first extend his tenure and then reject it? And what did we hear the defense minister say? He needed somebody young who had an urge for development. Can I also ask Mr. Patra as also Mr. Parikar, why did the Prime Minister then bring in as his first act by way of an ordinance Mr. Narpinder Mishra as his principal secretary at the age of 70? We just have had a commendable economist in Mr. Arvind Panigreha, who is 62 as vice chairman of Niti Aayog. Defense Minister himself is almost 60. Prime Minister is 64. For heaven's sake, do not deride, humiliate and disrespect the scientific community of this country in this fashion. If you have to reject somebody, as was rightly said on your channel, do not extend his contract, do not put him on a contract, but for heaven's sake, do not disrespect achievement, do not disrespect talent, do not disrespect contribution to the Indian scientific community by your own whims and fancies and by in such autocratic fashion.
Ajay Shukla just wants to come in, then I'll come to you, Sambit. Yes.
Sambit Patra made this distinction between the decision itself and how it was done. How it was done, everybody's in agreement. It was done shabbily, and a patriot was treated badly in this particular incident. But I come to the more important question about the restructuring and the revamping of DRDO. There is no doubt it needs to be done. The DRDO needs to deliver more. It needs to be made more effective. But if anybody has reached the conclusion that by easing out everybody over a certain age and bringing in young people, you're going to resolve the problem, that is, I fear that this is tokenism. This is not good thinking. You need a mix of veterans, you need some young people selected, and that's why I say you, rather than choosing between younger and older, the choice has to be between incompetent and competent. But that requires a deeper, more effective look, and I'm afraid that what you're seeing over here is tokenism.
Sambit Patra.
Two things. I mean, like a part of the panelists over here are saying that the scientific community is really appalled by what has happened today. But contrary to it, I have documents with me which shows that the scientific community, the young scientists especially, are quite happy about it, in the sense, the two parts of the debate, that the retirement age has been looked into. I mean, over here I have the complaint of one Mr. Naveen Gupta, who is a DRDO scientist, grade C of Kanpur, and he states the post-retirement contract is not legal and has been made against the rules. A contractual employee can be taken for an advisory role, but not to head an organization. Over here we have to rule, I mean, you have to see one thing, Nidhi. The thing is, it's not bad. Definitely, Mr. Chandar, I mean, is a fantastic scientist, and his services should be of value to the country, and the country would definitely like to have his services. But generally, and if he is performing on a very important subject, then let's have a continuity in a contractual pattern also, there's no problem. But most of the DRDO top notches who have exceeded their ages are not performing anything which is of scientific.
Who put Dr. Chandar on contract? Your government. I mean, you're saying that the
young
scientists... The young scientists resent
we have
the
to distinguish between the
contract.
administrative job and the scientific job, and definitely young blood needs to come in. You would be astonished to know that there have been 500 dropouts of young people from DRDO since 2008.
Was that discovered only now? Was that discovered only now after he got his extension? Pallav, I'll take that question to you. I mean, you know, one is of course the restructuring of the DRDO. Do you concur at all with Ajay that it needs a mix of experience and young blood? It needs to be a distinction between who is competent and who is not. Bottom line, is age going to be the factor here as far as the restructuring is concerned?
Well, the DRDO needs to deliver and needs a restructuring. There is no doubt about it. But at the same time, let me clarify a fact. It was the UPA government which put Dr. Avinash Chandar on a contract. He was not on a re-employment. He was put on a 3-year contract by the UPA government, not by the BJP-led NDA government. his age, became 64 in November of 2014. He could have been given an exit at that point. That is a debatable point.
No, that is exactly what we're saying.
But the contract was given by the UPA government.
1 second, Ajay wants to interrupt you there, Pallav. 1 second, Ajay just wants to come
That
there.
is a 3-year tenure.
This is factually incorrect.
No.
He was given an 18-month extension on full employment terms up to his age of superannuation, which was in November last year. And the subsequent 18 months, he was given a total of 3 years. The subsequent 18 months were to be governed on contract because he had reached the age of superannuation. But it was the BJP government, the NDA government, which was in power in November when he finished his full employment terms. And then he was placed on contract.
Yeah. Nidhi, one has to realize the facts over here. I mean, this was decided by the UPA government 1 year prior to the age of 64 of Mr. Chandar. I mean, this was decided way back in 2013 November.
That when he reached the age of 64, he would be placed on contract. But he reached the age of 64 when the NDA government was in power.
Suddenly found his voice.
No, I have the documents also. This was a letter which was issued by the UPA way back in November 2013.
But the BJP government didn't have to put him on contract.
Would be given
That's
to
the point.
Mr. Chandar
Sambit Patra,
when he reaches
he
the age of
retired
64.
on the 30th of November last year. He could have been allowed to retire gracefully. You didn't have to let him be on contract. Finished.
No, that is not the issue. The issue is all these things happen in an evolving way. It is not that one sudden day the government takes a decision. The government must have studied all the reports and in a gradual way found that, well, yes, the DRDO has to change. And as I pointed out and other speakers also pointed out, the Ramarao committee existed. The Ramarao committee definitely wanted an overhaul. So what is the problem if we had an overhaul? So
you could have had the overhaul on 1st of December.
This is just the point. The BJP seems to believe that by sacking the DRDO chief, you have overhauled the industry.
It is not sacking, for God's sake, don't call it sacking. The contract has ended. End of contract should not be called
Randeep Surjewala has a quick
sacking.
rebuttal, then I have to wrap. Yes, Randeep.
Yeah. Nidhi, it's really regretful if the NDA government and its defense ministers take 7 months to study a contract and decide whether to extend or not. What were they doing all this time? The truth is that a conscious decision was taken by the government and the defense minister to extend and give a 18 months contractual extension to the gentleman concerned. And it's only a complete change of mind. I don't know, by changing one person, can you do so? You have not even given a replacement.
I think that is at the heart of this debate.
I sincerely feel for an organization like DRDO, defense minister should have found a replacement.
By removing the DRDO chief, are you really overhauling the organization, which actually does need an overhaul? And whether this is then the way to do that, and whether we're kidding ourselves into thinking that anything's going to change. I'm completely out of time, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us tonight and giving us perspective on that important story. We'll be back tomorrow night at the same time. Do join us then.